welcome to everybody watching us on Zoom and also on Facebook and watching the streams later. Welcome to this third webinar in our series of webinars in the ECA-EC project co-funded by the European Union Creative Europe program. Today, we are very happy to welcome speakers from Tenso, who is our partner in the ECA-EC project, and you will hear a little bit later what they do. So Laura Lopes is representing Tenso, and she has brought two further people that she will interview, Julia Reckendrees and Jenni Reineke. And we look very much forward to what they will tell us on how to get into the world of professional choirs. And I will pass the word over to my colleague, Sophie Dowden, our project manager.
Thank you very much, Sonia. So I just want to give a quick introduction to the ECA-EC project. As Sonia mentioned, this webinar is the third in our series as part of this project, which is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the EU. The ECA-EC project is directed towards improving the training and creating opportunities for learning for emerging musicians. So particularly singers, as we are the European Choral Association. But if you would like to find out more about the project, you will find more details on our website. Then I just want to make a few comments about the practical issues. So number one, please note, we are recording this. You are not going to appear on screen because we're in the webinar mode. But if you want to get involved, then you can always write something in the chat. So when you are using the chat, don't forget to select all panelists and attendees if you want everyone to see your message. And this would be really nice if you want to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us where you're joining from. And there will also be an opportunity later to ask questions. Please don't ask questions in the chat. Please use the dedicated question and answer function. This might be called something different on your Zoom if it is in a different language, but you should see the two options, and I hope that that is clear to you. But we are going to have a conversation today between our three guests here. And this is going to be led by Laura Lopes from Tenso. And so I will pass over to you now.
Thank you so much, Sophie and Sonia. First of all, I just want to thank the European Choral Association-Europa Cantat for the invitation to partner up for this webinar. I am the coordinator of Tenso Network Europe, which is the European network for professional chamber choirs. So I have been in this post for a little bit over a year. I have been involved in Tenso's activities since 2014, more on that later. But yeah, so we decided to, in conversation with Sophie, thinking what would be best for the ECA-EC project. We decided that would be a really good idea to invite two amazing singers and educators that I happened to met in 2014 in Tenso Europe Chamber Choir. So this is all, you know, coming full circle, isn't it? I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. But first of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Tenso. So, as I said, we are the European Network for Professional Chamber Choirs. At the moment, we have 21 members in 16 European countries. Some of our members you probably heard of, I hope all of them. And it is quite a varied group. The range comes from, you know, a 12 people vocal ensemble to a 60 singer radio choir, national state choir. And the activities Tenso has been doing in the last 10 years have ranged from Tenso Days, which is a sort of mini choir festival where Tenso choir members come together and perform and share. Usually that's connected to Tenso professionals meetings, which are short conferences on themes interesting for, you know, choral singing. We had engaging the young, we had about new technology. So it really depends. And then there are the educational activities. So we have Tenso Europe Chamber Choir, where we met. So that's a summer thing with young singers that come from across Europe and sometimes even further away. And they all get together for a couple of weeks and put together a program and a few concerts and little tours. And there are also the Tenso Composers workshops, where, you know, composers are invited to write for choirs. Some of them have never written for choirs before. They are taught and helped by professional composers and conductors. And then there's the Composers Award, Tenso Composers Award. So there's a sort of a competition going on, and they get to do workshops, and then at the end there's a final prize with a commission. There are also the conductors' masterclasses, so that we are very lucky to have really amazing conductors and educators as part of Tenso. So they get to learn from them. And yeah, it's a very active network. We have very interesting people around. I meet with the managers regularly, with some of the conductors as well. And I find it very interesting that we can be together in this way across Europe. So yeah, so that's a little bit about Tenso. And I would love for, maybe Jenni, you could start, if you could say a little bit about yourself. And thank you so much for being here.
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks for joining and thanks for the invitation to speak here. I am Jenni. I am a singer. I focus on singing in professional chamber choirs. I also teach singing, and I work as a coach for leadership in choral music. So these are my main activities. And yeah, I'm very much involved in the world of choral music. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Jenni. Could we now have Julia say a little bit about yourself, please?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. I'm a singer, singing teacher, and conductor, and currently living in Bonn, Germany. And yeah, the same as Jenni, my profession is singing in professional choirs all over Europe. As Laura already told you, we all met at Tenso Europe Chamber Choir a few years ago, 2014, you said, Laura, right? And from there on, the adventure started.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. Well, a little bit about myself as well. I am the coordinator of Tenso, as you know by now. I am also a singer. That is my main activity. I sing in professional choirs. I have been a keen choral musician for a very long time. And I also work as an educator doing workshops in schools in the UK, even though I live in Portugal at the minute. It's a bit of a, European mode. And yeah, I work as a festival assistant for Brighton Early Music Festival and administrator for a little opera festival in Nice. So yes. Okay, so first question for you, Julia and Jenni. Did you do ensemble singing during your studies? Julia, would you like to start?
Yeah, yes, I did a lot of it. So I started studying school music in Cologne, which I started in 2008. And then I also studied a bachelor to train to become a singing teacher. And during my studies in Cologne, I sang in the chamber choir of the music college, and also in the jazz and pop choir of the music college, which is called Vocal Journey. They are a big part in the vocal festival Vocalone, which is a festival for pop choral music, which is very nice. And there are always lots of very well-known groups invited every year. For example, the King Singers. They were supposed to have Watches 8 last year, but this year in January, but we all know why that did not happen. They had the Swingle Singers already, the regroup, and yeah, big vocal groups. And I also was part of the German Youth Chamber Choir during my studies, where I met Jenni, actually. That was the first time we met, right? Yeah, I guess. And yeah, it was always a big part of my life. And then I thought, well, if that could be a job, that would be amazing. And then the conductor of the German Youth Choir, Robert Göste, told me of Tenso Europe Chamber Choir, which I applied for. It worked out. And then afterwards, I thought, well, if that's a really proper job, I'd love to do that. And I decided to also do a master's in Düsseldorf. And they have a program for ensemble singing, which I did. And I always had a professional vocal ensemble during this whole time, during my whole studies, which is called Kölner Vokalsolisten. And yeah, I sang a lot in choirs and ensemble. I also did a pop and jazz ensemble, which is called Sound Escape. So I always had both sides. Yeah.
Amazing. I think, you know, the ensemble singing during the studies is not a thing that is available everywhere. So I think, you know, in a way you were very privileged to have had access to all that. That's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
You know, how the line started and how it went to where you are now. Jenni, would you tell us a little bit about it? Did you study ensemble singing? How did it go?
No, I didn't study ensemble singing, but during my studies, I was also very lucky to study in a college it's in Detmold in Germany, where there is a very high focus on ensemble singing. There's a lot of offers, a lot of nice groups where you can sing with. And I think I sang in the chamber choir of the music college for 9 years. So this was a long time. And we participated in quite a few international competitions. I just saw somebody joining here from Oberdorf. There's also a famous competition where we also participated. And we traveled basically over all Europe for some smaller competitions. And I also founded a small vocal ensemble, which consisted of 8 people. And also with that, we did a lot of concert tours and yeah, tried ourselves out in competitions as well. Yeah, and then for me the same. During my studies, I joined Tenso Europe Chamber Choir, and this brought up a lot of connections in Europe, all over Europe. And this is where the way started to join the professional choral world for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jenni. In my case, in Portugal, where I'm from, you do regular school, and then if you want, you go to a different music school at the end of the day. And that's what I did. I studied at the Gregorian Institute in Lisbon, so it was very focused on early music from the start, and that's what I ended up studying as well. But the special thing about this school was that everyone needed to be had to have choir lessons. So basically you needed to be part of the choir if you wanted to study an instrument. And I found that very important. So I started singing in a choir when I was 11. And then I just really, really loved it. Making music with others was my favorite thing. Afterwards, I studied choir conducting. So yeah, I mean, we were conducting and being part of the university choirs in Lisbon. And then when I went to Holland to study early music singing, ta-da, there was nothing. There was no ensemble singing at all as part of my studies. And I found that shocking. So I ended up making a little bit of a reputation for myself that whenever there was a masterclass, I would bring an ensemble piece. and yeah, it was a little bit of a joke for some people, maybe for some of the teachers as well, if I can say that. But yeah, my love for ensemble music made me create my own opportunities when they weren't around, when I was studying solo singing. More on that later. But it seems to me, I was going to ask you the question, why did you end up doing choral singing? Was it a decision, or was it by chance? And, you know, looking at your paths, it seems that you were doing choral singing since you were relatively young. You really enjoyed it. You enjoyed the human part of it. Then going into the professional world, how is it? Decision or chance? Can you even decide? Jenny, would you like to tell me about it?
Yeah, gladly. So first, I wanted to become a pianist. I actually also studied piano. And so that was still in school times, and I was 16, and then I joined the county youth choir of the county where I lived. And that was for me like coming home, because I was suddenly not alone on a classical instrument, but I was surrounded by lots of people that loved to do the same thing that I did. I come from a totally non-musical background, so I was like all the time on my own doing this somehow. And yeah, I think that was the moment where it really clicked already. Okay, I really love to do that. And then I found out a few years later that there are professional choirs. I didn't know that when I was still in school. And then during my piano studies, I actually decided I will not become a pianist, but I want to become a singer to later be able to join a professional choir. And this was for me the reason to study singing eventually. And yeah, so the decision was made before I even studied singing that I want to sing in choirs later.
This is really amazing. I find it really inspiring that you had, you know, the strength in your mind to make that decision and to think about your path in a way that would make you able to do it. Amazing, really. Julia, would you tell me about it? Chance or decision?
Absolute decision. For me, choral singing is a big part of my life for all of my life since I remember. I was in a big children and youth choir before I studied, and I did a lot of children's music theater and musical. And I thought, I need to do this. I cannot imagine a life without singing. So it was really, really big decision for me to go study. And when I then found out that choral singing can be a job, I thought, well, that sounds like the perfect job for me. I want to do everything I can to be part of the professional choral world. And still to this day, I think it's, first of all, the greatest hobby that you can get. And secondly, but nonetheless, the greatest job you can have. I love teaching, I love singing, both as a soloist, but maybe a little bit more as a chorister. And yeah, it was a very conscious decision to do that. It was not by chance.
Amazing. I think you two are real examples, I think, for this, you know, for people who want to do choral singing. You can decide early. That's fine. I wanted to be a harpsichordist.
Wow.
Well, it didn't happen, did it? Still have a harpsichord, it's right there.
I didn't know about that, Laura. Why didn't you tell us before?
Well, I'm definitely an early music person, and that was clear. Harpsichord was my first instrument. You know, I didn't study piano before, but then, you know, singing and making music with others was always the focus. So that's interesting.
I mean, it's the best feeling, right? To stand in the middle of a choir, in the middle of the sound, and being part of something bigger, being part of a bigger sound that you cannot make on your own. It's lovely.
Absolutely. I think that's why we like doing it so much, I think. In terms of opportunities for professional singers that want to be involved in the choral world, can we think together about what types of choirs they could end up in? Julia, would you like to start? Give me some examples of types of choirs.
I mean, there are the radio choirs, of course. The big radio choirs, which are usually consist of more members. Then there are lots and lots and lots of concert and chamber choirs around all over Europe, which usually have not that many singers, depending on the music they're singing, they have around 16 to like 32 people, probably. Sometimes more, sometimes even less. You have a lot of independent ensembles that vary in the number of people, from 4 to 12, maybe.
Yeah.
And then there are also lots of opera choirs, of course. Did I forget something?
I would say I would add church choirs as well, because you know, it depends per country how big the tradition is in this and if these are professional or not. But for example, in the UK, there's a very big tradition of cathedral choirs being with professionals. So that's also an option, you know, out there for those of you thinking, where could I go? And also, I would say the repertoire specific choirs. So, you know, groups that do mostly early music, or groups that do mostly jazz or other things, or groups that chamber choirs that work mostly with orchestra, so that you do a different type of repertoire, or mostly a cappella. So there are really many options. And
not to forget contemporary music.
Absolutely, you know, there are some groups really focus on that, and we have a couple of those in Tenso. And yeah, I always find it very interesting, the difference between what is a vocal ensemble, what is a chamber choir, and what is a radio choir. Is this only a matter of numbers, or do you think there need to be different skills involved? Jenni, would you like to, do you have an opinion on this?
I have a few thoughts on this, let's say. I think, for me at least, vocal ensemble implies a lot more individual responsibility. So that the divisi is much like more separated in the voice groups than in a choir. Of course, in a choir can also be 8, 12, 16 part if you want, but the term of vocal ensemble somehow means to me that people are consciously doing soloistic stuff together at many points. I think that's mostly it. If you don't want to call yourself a choir, why? Maybe because of that, but I would be interested. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of vocal ensemble is a smaller group than a chamber choir,
Yeah,
you know, in general. But I would say that not all vocal ensembles sing one to a part. But the singing one to a part is definitely employs a different set of skills, in my opinion. And yes, more individual responsibility, as you said. Julia, do you have any other opinion about, you know, this vocal ensemble chamber choir dilemma?
I mean, opinions differ, of course. One to a part is a big theme, but just as you just said that, I thought, well, there are lots of chamber choir pieces where you only have 16 singers, and there's one to a part, and you still call it the chamber choir, right? But I would second the opinion of Jenni that you need a special skill set to do that, to sing really soloistically and to have the soloistic responsibility in the ensemble, but still are able to mingle into the sound and to really be part of the blending, basically.
Yeah, absolutely,
both musically and vocally, if that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense. I think that's exactly it. And how would you feel if I dared to say that that's what we're aiming for as choral singers, to have at all times this individual responsibility that, you know, we want to do our job really well, because every one of the colleagues doing their job really well will make a better sound. So even if we're singing in a choir with lots of people, would you say that you're always aiming for this vocal ensemble skill set. How do you feel about it, Julia?
I think yes. At least for me, these are the most exciting rehearsals and concerts and ensembles when there's the possibility given from the conductor also, the freedom for all of the singers to suggest something while we do music, and then other people join them. For example, I don't know, a tenor that is suggesting some stylistic color, and everybody else hears it and says, hey, that's a good idea, and the conductor gives the freedom for everybody to join in on that new color that you maybe did not rehearse, what is nice on the spot in the concert, and something new is being created in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's nice. It's the most fun for everyone, I think.
I think so. I think so. Jenni, what do you think about this? Are we aiming for this skill set always?
Yes, in the professional choral world, definitely. And I would say it is also some kind of leading and of taking responsibility if you hold back, if you don't stick out, if you don't give a characteristic idea to the group. But when you really know what's going on in the score and who is important right now. So even if you step a few steps back and you do that consciously to give space for others, this is the same kind of energy of taking responsibility in the whole organism of a choir.
Mm-hmm.
So and people sometimes mix up that this is a weakness, right? To take yourself back in a choir. But actually, I think it's one of the biggest strengths of ensemble singers to be able to do that as well as leading.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. This, I mean, I could be talking just about this topic for hours, but and I know you two could too. That's why it's the two of you here, because I know you are as passionate about these themes as I am. So amazing, really. Okay, so now we talked about the different types of choirs you could end up in, or groups or ensembles. Call it whatever you like. But how do you choose? How do you know where you fit? What steps would you say, looking back and thinking, what would I have liked to have heard when I was starting? What could have helped me? Jenni, would you like to start? How do you choose?
Yeah. So my first thought when I decided, okay, I want to become a professional choir singer, was I wanted to go to a radio choir, because in Germany there are 7 radio choirs and it's fixed jobs, it's super good jobs, and the choirs are of very high quality and so on. It's nice work. So I didn't really choose. I just thought I want to go to a radio choir. And I started auditioning for them also a lot too early, which was good experiences, now looking back. But later I found out that actually what I really want to do is more bound to the repertoire. So I grew up with the a cappella repertoire in chamber choir style, and I really love romantic music and the a bit more moderate contemporary music that's not too crazy for the voice. And so eventually I looked more for, okay, where are these chamber choirs that do this kind of music, where I feel musically at home, and also by the poetry that you sing, and by the sound, and also by the amount of people in the group. So I think the most comfortable I feel in a group up to maximum 30 people, and then already it starts for me to get a little bit too big. But up to then everything is fine. So then I basically searched for my nicest pieces that I liked the most, and who sang this. I knew a lot of choirs also through the Tenso Europe Chamber Choir, so I found out a little bit by that. So this is how it went.
Yeah, amazing. So starting from the music, this is the music I like.
Yeah.
Who sings it? okay, maybe I could audition there. What about you, Julia? We talked before, and you mentioned something interesting about this. You mentioned recordings, you know, and who recorded the piece, and do I like that? Is that the way you started choosing the choirs you wanted to audition to?
It's at least yeah, now I do this, but I did not do it in the beginning. In the beginning, it was very funny actually, because it was a bit different from Jenni, but also the same. I wanted also to become a member of a radio choir, but I thought, well, first to train for the radio choir auditions, maybe I could just try out the chamber choirs that are around, the free chamber choirs, because that must be easier than the audition for the radio choir, which I now know was a bit stupid. But it was good. And then I actually, after being part of the Tenso Europe chamber choir, I looked on the list from the choirs that are members of the Tenso Network, and I thought, yeah, I thought, okay, which choirs are interesting for me, which are near, which would be easy to travel to, and I started applying for choirs in Holland. And turns out these choirs are amazing. I didn't know about them before, and I love being part of them. And yeah, that was my my route. But now I would really focus on the sound of an ensemble, because I think this is a very, very important part of choosing which sound you admire, and also which sound fits your voice, or which choir your voice would fit into. And this also, of course, is depending on repertoire. But I mean, there are several choirs that I think all of the recordings are great, and that are interesting for me to audition for. And of course, also I talk a lot to colleagues and former teachers or professors, and ask them what they would suggest, if they know the conductors, if they know the colleagues around, the singers that are part of the ensemble, if it's a great working atmosphere. I think this is a huge part in our job. If I know in a choir that sounds great, but people undependent on each other tell me the atmosphere is bad, I know I don't want to audition for that choir. Of course not. I think nobody wants to work in a bad atmosphere. So yeah, talking to colleagues, teachers, professors, and just looking at the scene in general, making your own picture.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think it's of course difficult for us to go back and think what would have been the right way of looking at things. And of course, geographical reasons in the beginning are usually the thing. I completely understand that for the two of you being in Germany, that the radio choirs were the thing to aim for. That's the most famous ones, really important, really amazing radio choirs. For me in Portugal, there was only one choir in Lisbon I admired and that I wanted to get into, and it was, a sort of an obvious decision, and it didn't matter to me what repertoire it was or anything. It was just, it's the only one, so I'll try and be part of that. But then when I moved abroad, and when I started realizing that there are more options and more types of choir, then I thought, okay, I definitely don't want to be part of an opera chorus. That was my first decision, just because that kind of repertoire didn't interest me that much. And then I didn't want to be part of a radio choir because they're bigger. And that was a bit the same as Jenni, a smaller group would make me more comfortable. But then, and thinking that this is part of the EPIC project, so it's all about internationalization of these emerging musicians. How do you find out? If it's in a different country and you don't know anyone that has been part of it, and the only thing you can discover is their recordings on Spotify or on CD, how can you guess the atmosphere? How do you try? Jenni, any ideas?
Naja, guessing the atmosphere, maybe checking out a little bit the website if there is something that looks characteristic to you. But eventually it's also about trial and error with all auditions. If you want to be a soloist or end up wherever, you have to try things. And I would say if most of the things resonate with you, then go ahead and ask if you can audition or apply for audition if there is some official form that you can find. That would be my advice. To just go and try, and then also see and evaluate for yourself, how did you feel in the audition? Did you feel welcome? Did you feel comfortable? Yeah. Besides the fact that it was an audition, of course. Yeah, so that would be my thought about this.
Yeah, okay. Julia, do you have any advice for when you know nothing about the functioning of the ensemble before, because it's in a different country?
I also would just try, see how the audition feels, see how people treat you in the audition. Sometimes you see members of the choir before or after your actual audition spot. And then just see and try out the project and see how you feel. Sometimes you can see atmosphere on videos on YouTube by ensembles, if they have contact with each other during singing, if they are friendly with each other or not. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you actually really don't. But I would also say just try out.
Absolutely. In terms of, okay, you can do your research, right? You know, check for videos, check for recordings, and the website, and try to get a feel from that. But then how about looking at yourself and thinking, you know, maybe in my head, I want to do this, but then actually, what questions could you ask yourself to see where you will fit? Julia, would you give me a couple of questions?
With my students, I always ask them, what voice do you like in solo voices? What voices do you like and why? What characteristics do you hear? And if you have like 5 singers you like, what are the common characteristics? And then I would do the same with choirs. Why do you like the choir sound? What exactly is it that you find interesting in the sound or beautiful? And see if your own voice has that ability to do that. Of course, for me, it was very important, and I think it is still very important, to get as much experience as possible before auditioning. In singing in semi-professional choirs, by the way, or in youth choirs. That's a really, really, really big part. And then also, what repertoire do you like to sing? For me, as well as for you, Laura, it was a conscious decision not to sing opera music. I like it, but I don't sing it because my voice doesn't fit it. And with the choir music in general, I find smaller ensembles more interesting than larger groups. I always try to compare it to art, and I always say sometimes it's with a bigger brush and sometimes it's the little pencil drawings, and I find pencil drawings way more interesting because there's more detail. And if you like detail, and if you like really, really detailed work and going into depth of things, then the smaller chamber choirs or smaller ensembles are perfect.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, and if you like the really, really big scheme, then the bigger choirs, the bigger repertoire, or the opera choirs are more appropriate for you, probably. Can I think of something else? Maybe that's it for now. Of course, conductors are also interesting to have a look on. Which conductors do I find interesting? Which conducting do I find beautiful and appealing? Sometimes it's also a thing to think of. Yeah.
So yeah, so this was lots of, food for thought. What questions to ask yourself? What do you need to think about before even thinking, where do I fit? I would like us to keep going forward with our themes. So just very quickly, would you agree that young artist schemes, whether it's Tenso Europe Chamber Choir, World Youth Choir, or the Master and Apprentice schemes that some of the choirs have, do you think that's a good way to get the feel of what the choir is like if you go there as a sort of intern before? Jenni, what do you think?
Yes, I think that's absolutely valuable. I was never an intern in a choir, but I did other things before joining professional choirs eventually. And it was super helpful to build connections already, to see what kind of people work in this field and do I feel good there. I have to say that it also makes the chance higher that you will be maybe a subsidy or get a fixed job later in a choir when they already know you, but not necessarily. It's not a promise. So if you are in the academy of a choir for 1 year and they get to know you and you really do a good job, still, it's not a guarantee. So
Absolutely.
I think this is good to know that this happens all over the place. I know many people that build up big hopes, but I would really recommend to see stuff like that as a chance to develop more skills, to find out if this job is for you, but still know maybe my place will not be here. Maybe it will, but maybe not. It's still a tryout period.
I think that's very important to say. You will not necessarily get it, but then at the same time, you'll have that experience to see if it's right for you. Choose and be chosen. It's not only about being chosen. I think this is very important here.
It is, absolutely.
And also the youth choirs, of course, for me, at least, Tenso Europe Chamber Choir, for example, was the first time I worked on that level.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time that people on my level were gathered, that probably were also part of big choirs, but always being a bit like, yeah, we could go faster. I could go faster, but they were like the only ones in the choir, or maybe just a few, just part of a few in the choir. And then when you get into a choir that works on that level with a professional conductor, that is usually a chief conductor at a big ensemble somewhere, you get an idea of the level of the rehearsing tempo that you get, and if that's for you or not. It's also very important. It was a really, really crucial point for me to choose that career. And I found the atmosphere great. I found the level great. I found the repertoire great. And I thought, well, this is perfect. This is what I always hoped for, but never got it.
Yeah, and you could do it with people, around your age and around your
and like-minded. Yeah, same level of willpower and
commitment,
and practice hours. And I think it was really nice for the first time to be in a choir where everyone was like-minded.
Great. Okay, so young artist schemes, it's a big yes from us. And now let's go into the dreaded topic of auditions. So we didn't mention in the beginning, but Jenni and Julia have a new podcast. It's in German, by the way, called Sound Thinking. And they've been discussing very important themes about choral singing, professional choral singing. And 2 episodes of that podcast are about auditions. And so we decided to do a little, a short version of them here with me asking some questions. And so application process. Could you tell us very shortly how that goes, or how that can go if it's not very clear? Jenni?
Yeah, so first, how I found out about these audition possibilities, I just Googled. So this is my recommendation to everybody. If you found a choir, Google, see the website. I Google normally for vacancies, for freie Stellen, if it's in German, or Vorsing, Auditions, whatsoever, because they call it a little bit different each time. And on some websites, it's really difficult to find. If it's not super clear, I write an email. I just ask, I'm wondering, can I audition for your choir? Mostly then they send me a link back, and it's much easier than scrolling through websites forever, because especially the radio choirs, they are in this huge, under this huge roof of a whole radio thingy, which has a lot of ensembles and other things, and it's sometimes very complex to find what you're looking for. So email or application procedure as written there, and then normally you wait. You wait for getting an invitation, and that does not necessarily arrive much earlier than 4 weeks before the audition. It can be, but I had many cases where around 4 weeks before the actual date I got an invitation, and sometimes it was difficult also to organize it, to be able to go there, because of course people have also other things to do. But regarding the repertoire that you have to prepare, be prepared that you don't have much time. So this can happen. I also had audition invitations for 2 weeks later only.
May I add something just now, because it fits? I also, when I Google the ensembles, I take a look at the repertoire list at first and see if I have these pieces in my repertoire, if they overlap with different choirs, and what pieces I need to work on.
Yeah, but you don't always have a repertoire list when you apply.
That's
Sometimes
true.
they only send it later, especially for the obligatory choral pieces. Very often you only get it sent later with the invitation.
But
otherwise,
for a lot of choirs, there are lists online. Not all of them, of course, like maybe 50-50. But I think this is a great starting point to see what kind of repertoire also it is. And then practice that as soon as possible. Just so you know, you when it's a short time that you get noticed, you have to just warm it up again, and that you have it already in your body and in your muscles.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
For many auditions, what did I want to say? No, I forgot it. Maybe Julia want to go on first. I forgot what I wanted to say.
Well, let me pick it up. So usually, let's say that you found a way of applying for an audition, whether because it was already there and you could just apply and then you get an invitation, or because you emailed and you were a bit pushy and you said, I would really like to audition. When are you holding auditions? Let me know so that I can prepare. And then Jenni, you remember, tell me.
Yeah, be ready that you have to have an audio ready, like a recording of yourself. I mean, for many choirs you have to send a recording or even a whole CD. I had to send CDs with a lot of different repertoire.
What year is
a few
it?
Choirs. Huh?
What year is it? A CD?
Yeah, I burned a CD. I can still do that.
Amazing.
So this is something that you should know, that you might need good recordings.
So I think here we have two very good pieces of advice. Have an audio ready. If I may add, have artistic CV always ready, always updated, so that
and without typos. A lot of choirs look out for typos or things.
So carefully done CV, carefully done recording. It doesn't need to be, usually it doesn't need to be a whole CD. So it can be, you know, a couple of pieces that you're proud of and that show your voice. And then Julia's recommendation of, if there is a repertoire list on the website, start working on it even before you know if you're going to get an audition or not. Because usually there are some pieces that are greatest hits and that are asked for by many choirs. Friedhof, Erden, Schönberg, what? Okay. And okay, so
warum ist das Licht gegeben den Mühseligen bei Brahms? Also a big hit.
Yes.
And also have an audition list with your favorite pieces, because they usually ask you for your own pieces as well. Bring your favorites, pieces that you feel comfortable with, that you know work when in the middle of the night when somebody wakes you up, you can sing them. Just like 2 or 3 of them Your favorite repertoire?
About that, something very important. So in preparation for this webinar, the three of us worked together on a list of questions that we wanted to ask the conductors, the managers, the people that sit in the audition panels. And so I did a little anonymous survey among Tenso, that I can tell you that it's Tenso. And I will have a few quotes later on, but one of them really rang with me about this, the choice of the pieces that you get to choose, the solo pieces usually. The choice already tells me a lot about the singer. So what Julia said, I think is very important. Choose the stuff you love. Choose the stuff that you will present in the most honest way. And just by reading the names of the pieces before you audition, the people in the panel can already have an idea about you. And I think that's very nice and very important. They get to know you a little bit from the beginning. Okay, I know we could really talk about this for hours. So let's press on. So usually the auditions have a few types of things going on. So usually there are solo pieces that are either obligatory or chosen by you. Sometimes, and in most of Tenso choirs at least, there are choral excerpts as well that are compulsory, and you need to choose your voice part, but from that piece. And then there can be vocalise, so vocal exercises, but that's not overly common. And sight reading, which can be a bit daunting sometimes, a bit scary, at least from my experience, but it's there sometimes. And also a little chat with the panel. So this would be normally a structure that you might encounter. You will be told what you need to do. Sometimes if there's stuff to be done prima vista, sight reading, they don't tell you. It might happen. So anyway, how can you prepare for sight reading? But I found it very interesting from the survey that I asked the panel members, what is more important? If we have three pieces, if we have a choral piece, solo piece, and sight reading, which one is most important? And basically, most of them said that the most important is the solo piece. And I asked why. The solo piece is more important because it shows how your voice works when you're fully prepared. So this is, at your best, you sound like that. And of course, audition nerves and things, but at your best, your solo piece gives a right idea. And then choral piece and sight reading are tied. Some people say that the choral piece is very important if it's done with other singers at the same time in an audition. It's very important to see how you adapt to them, how you can react to them if they, say a different kind of diction for that word or pronunciation, or if the tempo is a bit different, how the volume adapts. So that's very important to see how quick you are working in a group. But most times you sing a choral excerpt a cappella or with piano, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I also asked why. Most of the times it's a financial reason. It's because it costs too much money to have the singers come and be available for that moment on the audition day, which, it's a reason, unfortunately, I understand. And then some other people said that it was an artistic choice to have the choral piece be done a cappella to test your intonation, to test if you are thinking, it's visible for the panel if you are thinking of the harmony in your head when you're singing a choral excerpt. Now, very shortly, Julia, what do you think about this? Choral piece, solo piece, sight reading, solo is more important. Do you agree?
I have so many thoughts in my head now.
I know, sorry, I blurred.
I mean, it's very important. I also sat on a panel once or twice to listen to other singers. First of all, disclaimer, the panel does not want you to fail. The panel wants you to be good. This is very important to keep in mind. And of course, you can see in the soloistic pieces how the voice is developed, what musical and technical skills a singer has if they prepare it very well. At the same time, though, when we go then to the ensemble pieces, or even ensemble singing, which is the case in some of the choirs, that they have a few singers there that you sing in a 4-part piece with. It's very important to not sing less skilled, if you know what I mean. It does not have to do with dynamics. I mean, of course, you need to mingle into the sound and to blend with the other people, but still show color. This is very important. Still show your color. Because when all of a sudden you sound blank or white, it's not interesting. It's just not interesting to listen to. And I think it is very important that you can still hear the person and not just a beautiful voice, but without any structure.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions I asked on the survey was, what usually stays with you about a candidate after an audition? What is the thing that makes an impression? And I was going to say it later, but I have it here somewhere. Sorry. The voice qualities were, you know, what stays with you? The quality of the voice. And then just after, personality, attitude, and character. And then if you keep going, if something goes wrong. So I think this is very important, and it really shows that sometimes we are so worried about not making a mistake that we get off the expression and the attitude and get off of ourselves. And this is very important. The voice quality, yes, absolutely. Beautiful solo singing, beautiful voice and ability to mingle. But then your personality and your attitude, also very important. And that's what stays. That's also, you know, what people write down so they remember you. It's the quirky one that said good morning in a really good mood, or, you know, something like that. I think it's very important.
That would be me.
Me too. I usually, when I get nervous, I start cracking jokes, which in an audition situation can be funny. Anyway, so I also have a little anecdote about the question of the choral excerpts, because we talked about this, and one of the questions we wanted to ask is, if they're done a cappella or with piano, should they be sung soloistically, or as if imagining that there are 4 or 5 other people singing the same part as you? And I asked this question and I got some very funny answers.
Jenni, didn't you ask that actually in an audition before? You did, right? Which is very brave.
Yes, please. How was that?
Yeah, first I recommend ask questions if you have questions during an audition. You're not a victim. And yeah, it was that I sang it like singing solo, and then I finished and I pulled through super long phrases and stuff like that, and then I stopped and I at the end and said, yeah, and I'm never sure, should I sing it like I would sing it in a choir with 5 other altos, or should I sing it like it's a solo song? And then they said, maybe just sing it again like you would sing it in a choir. And then I did stagger breathing with having fantasy altos next to me. And they said, yeah, good to hear that you do it like that. So
that's very interesting. Ask questions. You are allowed to ask questions. Own the situation. Very important advice. Anyway, so one of the quotes I have for you about this is, so soloistically or as with others? Just as soloistically as needed. Good luck. And right amount of vibrato, whatever the right amount of vibrato is. And of course, ensemble skills. So, gray area. This can be very interesting. What I loved about this survey is that the people who responded really took their time to write what they think, but then you see how subjective these things are. So when people say with the right amount of this or that, the right amount can be anything. So I would say from this that, you know, you have a bit of freedom to find out what is the right amount. What do you think, Julia?
I think for the vibrato thing, I think vibrato is not forbidden, but they want to see that you can sing without. Vibrato, without the voice getting stiff. You know, they want to hear very, very free sounds, and you can use vibrato if it's not too operatic, at least for the chamber choirs, but still they want to hear if you can sing non-vibrato without being like this, but still being
absolutely
free.
I think I completely agree. Jenny, do you have something to say about this, the vibrato issue?
The vibrato issue will follow you along your way when you join choirs. Depends a lot on the conductor also. But what I would recommend regarding these very open opinions on that by the different choirs, if you're not sure what they want, it's super important that you make a decision for yourself how you want to do it. Because otherwise, if you don't decide that, it will sound insecure about what you want to do. And then they just hear insecurity and not what you really could do. And I had got a very, very important advice one day from a quite good, very, very good choral conductor. When I asked him all the time, what should I sing? What do you think? And so on. And he always said the same. He always said, you have to sing what you love and how you want to sing it. And it might take a bit longer until you find the choir where you should end up, but you will end up where you belong. And if you make a decision how you want to sing something, if it's not clear how they want to hear it, then you show yourself. And I think this is really very important. It takes a lot of courage, but this is how it works.
Absolutely. I had saved a little quote for the end, but I think this is the time to say it now. One very famous conductor, that I will not say the name, but I know it was him, answering this survey, said, I'm listening for a singer I will want to listen to again, for whatever reason. And so this is it. You know, you are different than others. Embrace it. Just do it. If they want to listen to you again, it's because it's interesting. Then, you know, I think when I read this one, I was like, yes, this is important. I want to listen to this person again. It caught something. Okay, so shall we move on to the next topic a little bit, or just a little something about singing with piano in an audition? Usually there is an accompanist. Sometimes you have to bring your own, but usually there is one there. And you need to very fast you need to be able to communicate with him what you want to do with your solo pieces or the excerpts if he or she is playing as well. And so I asked if they prefer that the singer takes the lead or if they prefer that the singer follows the pianist that is there. And the answers were also quite funny. The majority of people said that if it's your solo, you take the lead. But if the pianist is accompanying the choral piece, you should mostly follow the accompanist. And in case of doubt, just ask what you need to do. Same that Jenny said. And then the funny one. The singer has to take the lead, but has to follow the piano if the pianist is right. So, again, one of those, but I love the honesty in these answers. I think it's important. Now I wanted to ask you, what about when it's an online audition or, you know, that you don't get to be in person with people? Any short advice about that? Jenny?
Well, during these Corona times, I didn't audition online at all. I have one experience with online audition, and that was for Tenso Europe choir. And we had to record a lot of things. And I would say take it as a chance for learning. I think most singers work also with recordings for themselves and sending in recordings as part of an audition or is the main audition is a great chance to learn about yourself, to really consciously listen and find again what you want to present of yourself, of your sound, and yeah, do it with patience, because it's sometimes not so easy to listen to own recordings. We are all our biggest critics ourselves, and yeah, it needs patience.
Okay, so for the next thing, can we just go very quickly through what the audition day is like? I will just say, you know, what usually happens, and then maybe Julia, you could just pick up some 2 or 3 things that you want to say about that, because we need to move on to the Q&A quite fairly quickly. So an audition day usually looks like, you know, you travel. Sometimes you need to travel, can be a long time. And then maybe there are some rituals that you do before the audition. Maybe Julia can tell us a little bit about that. And then what about food and drinks? Do you need to avoid something? Is that better? Is that something you even have to think about? And what about warming up? Do you do it before you travel, you know, so many hours before? Do you hope that there's a warm-up room there? How can you know if there is one ready for you before your audition? And yeah, Julia, would you like to tell us something quickly about these things? Rituals maybe would be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So where do I start? I try to travel the day before, if possible. If the journey is very long, I try to travel the day before, so that there are no train being late, no plane being late, nothing, no stuck in traffic. Yeah, I just try to be there way before. And then I like to warm up fairly well and sing through all of the repertoire. I know that a lot of singers don't do that at all because they maybe are not fit anymore afterwards. But for me, and this is only my voice and my body, I get on the highest level if I sing a lot before.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are several teachers and other singers that say don't ever do that. So you just need to find out for yourself what is right for you. I feel best if I sang through everything once. And then there's a little sweet spot at some point where it's too much, or you're just on the right amount of
just
level.
Before being tired.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you deal with it?
Hopefully that's the point where your audition starts.
Right.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
How do you deal with if there is no warm-up room?
I would ask before if there's a warm-up room. I would ask in the hotel if it's okay if I warm up in the morning, or wherever I'm staying in an Airbnb or with friends. I would ask. And if you're well warmed up in the morning somewhere else, you can easily get on the same level in 5 minutes when you're there. It's the same with concerts as well. I mean, most of the times you don't have a warm-up room, and you need to warm up in the morning at home and then just get it again after a few minutes. And I like to avoid certain foods and drinks, of course. But again, this is something you need to find out for yourself, what works with your body. I know that I cannot eat nuts on the day or the days before. Otherwise, my voice gets a bit slimy. And I cannot have gin and tonic, which is a shame because, yeah, my voice reacts to it. I avoid certain drinks like orange juice, milk. Acidic things, exactly. Tomatoes, these kinds of things. But I guess this is different for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's again trial and error, and it comes with experience. If you have had something like sometimes curries also and spicy food gives me lots of trouble with singing, and you will just find out by singing more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to now switch a little bit. Jenni, would you mind just telling us, when we were preparing this webinar, you said a sentence that stuck with me. You said, that it was important to own the situation in an audition and not be a victim of it. Would you mind explaining what you meant by that?
I was, of course, talking out of experience. So very often in auditions, especially in the beginning, I really felt like I just have to fulfill something here and I have nothing to say. I should just sing, and I'm a victim of this situation of maybe 45 people of a choir looking at me, and I don't know the room. I mean, there's many uncertainties popping up on the day of audition. You will sing with a pianist that you most probably don't know, and you will not have a chance to prepare with this person, and so on. So it is super important that the things that you can have under control or that you can own, you do. And with, the biggest self-esteem possible and with courage. This is what I mean when I say ask questions. If something is unclear, ask. Yeah, it's not forbidden to talk in an audition. I thought that a long time. I shouldn't say anything. And also beforehand, if there's unclear things, for example, about the structure of the audition day, will it be 1 round? Will it be 5 rounds? Will there be a room for warming up and so on? Ask, write emails. Maybe feel a little bit annoying. I'm very sure you won't be. Yeah, you will never write to the chief conductor. You will always write to somebody whose job it is to answer questions. And I think it's very important to have that in mind so that you can do the best for yourself, so you can sing the best on that day, because that's what they're looking for, singers that sing well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think this is very, very good advice. And can I just say a little something that I feel helps me in an audition? Usually you don't know the room that you will be auditioning in. And sometimes you open a door and it's tiny. And some other times you open a door and it's huge and you have no idea. And you will sound different in different rooms, right? So I really go for the good morning, everyone, kind of, very, very focused voice already when I speak.
In your singing voice.
Not necessarily, but just something that I can try and hear how the room sounds before I start singing. Otherwise, the first 10 bars of anything will be searching.
Yeah.
And so if you can, try to fit this getting used to the room in your speaking before you need to perform, maybe you could. This is just a little piece of advice of something that works for me. Again, very personal.
That's great. I will do that next time.
Me too.
Right. Okay. So imagine you've done your audition. You survived it, right? You didn't get too scared when the jury started writing things. And so we thought about this and we asked the managers and the conductors about what are they writing? And I got some funny answers again. Sometimes they write something just to remember who you are. So something about, what solo pieces you sang, something that at the end of the day, they can think of you again. And sometimes it's literally, they write yes, no, meh, or just scribbling. It can be doodles and funny faces. And very important, I write things down even when I like it. So don't be nervous when a jury is writing. I think this is very important. I tend to, when I see someone that is looking at me, I'm singing, and suddenly they write, I think, okay, in this bar, I did something wrong. And I think that's probably something that others think. So have this in mind. It's not necessarily bad. It might just be they need to remember you for something so that they can discuss it at the end of the day. Okay, next. And what happens if you get a yes and then don't get an invitation? Julia.
Ask. I think this is the basic line of today. Ask questions. Just ask. Just ask them. I got a yes from you 4 weeks ago. I haven't got any invitations. I know probably you don't do any invites at the moment, but when can I
expect something?
Expect an invitation, or do I just need to be patient? Just ask.
Great advice. Jenni.
And then ask again.
This is it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid of being pushy or annoying, because as Jenni said, it's the job of that person to answer questions. So it's part of their job description somewhere. So yeah, so Jenni, what happens if you get a no? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably hundreds of different ways to deal with the no and the disappointment and with the feeling of failure. In general, you never really know why you get a no, except you get a feedback. And that's very valuable in most of the cases, I find, for myself. But I know also that sometimes they just send a general email out. I think something like your voice didn't fit the choir. And everybody gets this email that didn't pass the audition. It can just be that they are looking for a completely different kind of voice, what they didn't know before, what the color of your voice is. Laura, you want to add something?
Can I just say, I also asked that question. Do you have a voice in mind when you hold auditions, or do you just listen to what's beautiful and then think if it fits? Because if it's the second way, so that they just hear everyone, and if it's beautiful, you get a yes, and then they think if you fit, and then you actually don't fit because they already have that kind of voice type already. You know, that can be a reason for that yes that never happens. You know, that can be one of the reasons. But also the thing of if they have a specific voice in mind, that doesn't mean that next year when they hold auditions again, that they're still looking for that specific voice type. So maybe you can just try again. It's a chance factor. Maybe this very specific sounding person is leaving and they need someone that fits like that. So yeah, that's it. It's a tricky one, but I think you're right, Jenni. It might be a timing thing.
It might be a timing thing, absolutely. But if it's not, if it's really that they didn't like something about your singing and you get a chance to get a feedback and you are interested in maybe implementing what they said into your following practice time, changing something, working on something, this is also something you can ask for if you don't get it by default. I did that many times after an audition, that I asked, is it possible to get a feedback? Mostly it was possible, and I got a call from one of the alto groups, and that was super helpful. It was also sometimes quite tough to hear these things, but it was helpful. And I only heard once in all auditions I did that they don't do feedback. So this is very, very good. And even if you get a no, it can happen that you end up in that choir a few years later. That happened to me. I auditioned for one ensemble twice. I didn't pass, and still I'm singing there today because the same conductor heard me somewhere else, because they heard me in the audition, and maybe 2 years later they thought, aha, there was once this alto and we didn't take her back then, but now actually she would fit super well. So a no maybe mostly means not yet. So this is how I would translate this. And yeah, also, if you're not certain about if you can audition again for a choir, you can always ask. And mostly they say, of course, you can. They want to hear people again, how they developed, how it's going. And only in very few cases, when they really hear in the first audition, it doesn't fit, this voice would never be integratable into this choir, then they say, we don't think it makes sense that you expose yourself in this situation again. But normally you can audition again, definitely. They all know that voices develop the whole life. And if you work on things, you can always get better.
Yeah, I just wanted about that voices develop throughout your life. One of the questions in the survey was to order, in terms of importance for the person answering, things like intonation, volume, musicality, and other things. And the most important things for most people were intonation and musicality, and the least important things were how they speak, the eye contact with the panel, and age. So this thing that we think that we're too old to audition somewhere, I don't think it exists in professional choirs as much as we tend to think it does. So this is important. You can still audition in 2 years. You know, there are usually not age limits for choral singing as they are for opera singing or other things. So yes, you can still develop and still try again in most cases. I think this is important. I would like to, before we go to the Q&A, I would just like us to, I will give you something. What makes you more likely to be chosen? Thinking that you chose this choir, what makes you likely to then be chosen? And I would say, you know, from the survey, if you have a technically and well-balanced voice with harmonics, that was mentioned quite a lot. If you have a less common voice type, you probably have a bigger chance of getting in because you're special, because you're interesting, because they want to listen to you again. And your adaptability, if you can adapt to others and be versatile. What would you say, if you give me one word each of a thing that makes you more likely to be chosen, an adjective or something? Julia.
Authenticity.
Perfect. Jenni.
Enthusiasm.
I think this is great. So I think the two of you definitely have this in loads, and it's really great. So we could go on for ages, as I said. I think now it would be a good time for Q&A. So Sophie, would you like to ask us some questions?
I'd love to. We're a bit behind schedule, but that is, I don't think anyone minds. This has been a fascinating discussion.
Our bad.
We could keep going. So let's take maybe like 10, 15 minutes for the questions that we have. We'll try to get through as many as possible. So let's start from Killian. What differences did you experience in vocal technique between different choirs? Extremes might be vocal ensembles and opera choirs.
Can I ask Julia to answer that one?
Yes. For me, how can I need to structure my thoughts. I don't have any experience in opera choirs, first of all, disclaimer. But still, I sing in various choirs that do very, very different repertoire.
The jazz experience for the classical, for example, technically, do you have any major differences?
What I try to differentiate my sound with my breath and with my support, whatever that is. That's a full discussion for a week that we could have. And of course, use of vibrato. Yeah.
I would also maybe add a technical difference is the thing that Jenni mentioned in her audition of singing like a soloist or singing like a choir singer. In breath control, you know, if you're singing in a choir, you can take a breath more times in general, and that will change how your voice sounds generally. So that could be one of the big differences.
And again, of course, the legato in Brahms is a different one than the legato for Bach.
Yeah.
And just keep that in mind and try to do it in an appropriate way for the style.
I think experimenting is probably a good idea. If you sing the same piece in different styles, and if you exaggerate in the beginning, you'll feel, oh, this one feels right and this one not so much.
Nice.
Maybe can we have the next question, Sophie?
Of course. So the next one is from, and I don't know where this person is from, so I'm very sorry about pronunciation of the name. Maybe it's Jan, maybe it's Jan, maybe it's Jon. In your opinion, can applying too early in your career harm your chances in that ensemble in the future when you're applying again? That is to say, they remember you as not being good enough and they won't take you seriously next time.
Jenni, could you let me know about this one?
Yes, I had this fear very, very big time. And I can say by now, in most cases, probably the opposite. If they have you in mind, like not being skilled enough yet or too unexperienced, and you come again and you improved a lot, you will cause a lot of respect in the audition panel, and they will see that you really want to do this. This is also something I think is important for choirs, that they have as many people on board that really want to do this. And if you go again, if you work on it, that's the best sign that you really want to do this. So I would say try it and see what's the feedback.
Yeah, but I would agree with Jenni. Trying again shows commitment. And if you improve, which you will, then, do it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And also, they probably see so many people that they might not remember you anyway. So sad as that is. Sophie, next.
So this is a question from an anonymous person in Belgium. I had a few questions about the particular part of sight reading in an audition, they say. How did you guys practice this? How do you maintain the skill over time? And how do you freshen it up to prepare for an audition?
Before I ask for an answer from these two, I would just like to say that from my survey, the people that said that sight reading was not that important, also said it's because it doesn't show the reality. You usually get the music beforehand when you do a project. And so sight reading is not that important because it's just a challenge on the day to see how you deal with the challenge. It's not about how many notes you get right, mostly, is to see how you work under pressure. So it's, in reality, there are very few cases in the job that you will have to sight read, especially difficult stuff as they put in auditions. So this is a bit of a, why is it there then, the sight reading? But yeah, so Julia, do you have anything to say about this?
Yes. So when I started to practice sight reading, I just took a songbook for church and tried to sight read all of the songs in there. That's how I started. And then now I just pick random scores out of my bookshelf and just try to read it, and not just read the soprano, but also the other lines, because most of the time for the sopranos, there are not that many jumps. Most of the times there are steps or jumps that are not that far. Try to sing the bass line in your register, of course, but they have a lot of jumps, a lot of fourths and fifths that a soprano usually does not have to sing, and then try to practice that. And then choose repertoire that is a little bit more advanced with rhythmical stuff as well, and practice with a click. And don't put the click on the downbeat, but put the click on an offbeat, so that you are precise in your timings. And what I always find fun is to sing Bach motets with a recording. Put a recording on, choose a Bach motet that you haven't rehearsed yet or that you haven't sung in years. Sing along, it's fun.
I think this is really great advice. I never would have thought of putting the metronome not on the beat.
It's a great tip from a percussionist and a conductor. That's a friend of mine. And I always rehearse my coloratura now with offbeats. Yeah, you have to be more precise. It's really nice. Amazing. It's fun. Yeah.
Great. Sophie, could we get another question? Oh, Jenni.
Could I just add two things? First, I think every practicing of new pieces you can take as a chance of practicing sight reading, because this is what eventually it is a tool for you. Good sight reading is a tool to learn new music faster. And the second one, what I do if I know the sight reading task might be quite difficult, I practice with a little book called Modus Novus from Lars Edlund. And it's a school for sight reading, 12-tone music, basically, also with difficult rhythms and so on. And I really recommend that if you want to feel like, hey, I did this already. You can give me some crazy lines. Do it. Yeah.
This is very important. I was going to suggest Modus Novus, we say in Portugal, and it was super useful during my studies and something that I used in my solfege learning. I had to teach solfege. My first bachelor's was in conducting and that, and it's a very useful tool for being able to decode music faster. Sophie, could we have another question, please?
Yes, so this next one, I'm going to try to summarize a little bit, because it's a bit long. But this is someone who sang in many choirs in their youth, but was already 18 when they decided that they wanted to prepare for an entrance exam. And after 2 years of preparation, unfortunately, they didn't make it through. And they feel that this was because a lot of soloists had this very dedicated training for a long time, and they were really shining, and they want to be a chorister rather than a soloist. And since they didn't really have the chance to get private vocal teaching, they were really frustrated about what they could do. So they didn't really want to be preparing for getting into a soloist class to finally go into a professional choir. And they were wondering if there were any thoughts or advice on this in their situation.
First of all, maybe you could think if that course is the one you should be doing, if you want to do really something very different. There are still lots of singing teachers who do not approve of choral singing, sadly. And this is something that will take, I think, still a few years to change. But maybe you could see if there are other courses in your area that have ensemble singing, that think ensemble singing is important. And maybe even if you're interested in that, the teaching courses usually sometimes have the ensemble singing, a bigger focus on ensemble singing. So you won't have to be competing with people that really have a very different focus than you for that. So maybe it's a matter of broadening the idea of where I could go study. There are more things than we usually think of. Singing is not just solo singing, and it's tricky sometimes. I feel you. Jenni, do you have a piece of advice?
Yeah, first of all, not for all choirs you need to have a degree in singing. So this is mainly true that you have to have it for the choirs that work in a public sector, that are funded by public sector. They want to see that you have a bachelor or master's, whatever. But a lot of free ensembles, I was actually never, maybe once asked by a free ensemble to show my papers regarding that. But of course, they are looking for highly skilled people mostly, and they are also looking for people that are, yeah, very good musicians. It's not just about the voice, it's also about being able to read the score very well and to learn music fast. And to get there, if your choir experiences are enough already, you should still try audition. You don't necessarily need the papers from a music college, in my experience.
Yeah, I think this
and
is
also
it.
get voice training with an experienced chorister.
Could be another option. Yeah, the formal ways of training are not necessarily needed in the professional choir world. Absolutely. Sophie?
Thank you for answering that one so sensitively, guys. That was lovely. And another question, can you speak about the working schedule that we can expect? How long are rehearsals and how often?
Yeah, Julia, would you like to give us an idea from your experience?
Yes. With the free chamber choirs, it usually, the rehearsals are 3 hours with a 20-minute break in between. Then you have a lunch break, and then you have 3 hours rehearsal again with a 20-minute break in between. And then usually, at least for me, I have warming up before that at home. And then after the rehearsals, I try to look over the pieces again, see which passages I need to have a look at again and rehearse for myself, where I did not feel safe in the rehearsal. And then on concert days, it depends. Sometimes we have a dress rehearsal that is like an hour or an hour and a half. Then we have an hour break, and then that's the concert. And the rehearsals take place en bloc. So we don't rehearse every week for a day or something, but we rehearse 5 days in a row with 6 hours of singing. And then we have the concerts afterwards. So it's project-wise.
Yeah, For project-based choirs, which are most of the chamber choirs, that's usually the case. For radio choirs or choirs that are part of a bigger institution like the radio television or something, usually you have to go in every day. But in some cases that I know of, then it's not 6 hours a day, but only 4. If you do it every day. It depends a little bit on the structure of the choir and the funding of it. But I think Julia gave us a really good impression of a normal project week.
And I think we have a good partner question to that one, again from Killian. How many choirs are you a part of, or do you sing in actively?
Jenni, could you answer that one in your case?
Yeah, I'm a part of 4 choirs at the moment in Switzerland, Netherlands, and Germany, but there's always some smaller projects happening here and there of choirs that are not working constantly. But this is 4 choirs that I have to organize in my calendar.
And Julia?
I'm still counting in my head. I guess it's 4 as well.
There's an interesting part to this, because I know in your case and in my case as well, being part of a choir, what does that mean? Sometimes there are official ways that you're a member of it, but usually as a freelancer that works with project-based choirs, there is a sort of unofficial core group. So you are mostly asked for the projects, and maybe you're part of a pool of singers. So I would say that at the moment there's 1 choir that I'm asked for maybe 90% of the projects, but then I'm part of the pool of several more. So being part of it sometimes is not necessarily official. Sometimes it's also how you feel, and it depends on how many invitations you get. But don't be sad if you're just in a pool for several of these and not really part of something. That's very normal in the freelance choral singing world. Could we have another question, Sophie, please?
Of course. I think I might pair up a couple here. One person asks, what is the natural next step after being in a university scholarship chamber choir? And another person asks, where are auditions advertised? And I think we could do those together.
Jenni, would you like to answer that? Next step.
Yeah, next step is do the research, I would say, if you know you want to do this, what we started with basically. And not in all cases auditions are advertised. Sometimes they are nowadays on Facebook, but mostly the choirs rely on their websites if they have vacancies that are for fixed jobs, for example. But there is no newspaper for this in general. I think sometimes they are advertised in some music magazines, but yeah, it's research, definitely. I think maybe Julia knows also a bit more still about this.
I would make a list. I'm a fan of lists. I have just a structure that when are the auditions, where are they advertised? Look on the website. Sometimes they say our next audition will take place in 6 or 7 months. You can apply here. And sometimes they say we don't take any new people at the moment. Ask them if you can nonetheless send them something. Or if they don't have anything about auditions on the website, ask again if they do auditions and where you can apply for that. And maybe in that email, tell them that you're interested in working with them and why. Maybe that's also a good point.
And I think we have another question that would follow on well from this. Does it make sense to audition for choirs all over Europe? Will a choir pay travel costs for you if it's a flight, or should you try and stay local, at least like in your country or only a neighboring country?
If I may answer this one, because I live in Portugal at the minute, and I do not sing in Portugal very often, but I still sing mostly. It really depends. It depends on the funding structure of the choir, and it depends on your relationship with them. when I first started singing with some of the Dutch choirs, I was living there. And so I had, we got travel costs paid, but that was train fares. So nothing major. This is something that does not happen in every country, that you get travel costs within the country. So it really, really depends. And you can always ask about these things, ask. But then when I moved away, since I already had a relationship with the choir and the conductor, and they wanted me to still be a part of it, we had a discussion, and it was decided that they said that they would be able to pay for my flight and my accommodation. But this, I know I'm very fortunate in this case. I know this is not the case everywhere. So I think try to make it as clear as possible from the beginning is good. But if you already have a relationship with them, there might be a case that they are able to help with these. Jenni, do you have some experience on this? I know you do.
Yeah, my first thought was completely from the other side. You should also consider if you want to travel a lot, because projects themselves are demanding. And if you are singing all over Europe and having in between the projects travel days, that's demanding as well. So yeah, have a good look at your own energy distribution here, and also about travel possibilities. Now it's anyway different, but normally, like, are there good flight connections, or is there maybe a train or whatever? And yeah, about the travel costs, the same experience as Laura. It's very different, and make sure you get this information before you buy tickets.
And if we travel together, we always try to not get a hotel room somewhere, but get an Airbnb. So we are able to cook for ourselves, and we have a little bit more privacy and a little bit more home feeling when we're away. We have a whole episode on traveling with our podcast. So if you understand German, I would highly recommend listening or watching it, because we cover all of these topics there about traveling.
Great, amazing.
And okay, let's go to one of our Facebook questions then, from another Julia. Do you have any advice for singing piano?
Let's go technical now. Who wants to answer this one? Julia.
Of course. So when I sing, a little anecdote, when I'm invited somewhere as a soloist and I do a really nice pianissimo, people are like, how do you do that? And I actually just sing like I'm singing in an ensemble. So singing piano, try to still use your whole voice, get lots of room without losing the focus, and support. Whatever that means something different for everyone else, but support for me is something flexible, not static. Don't use too much weight. Sometimes for high sopranos, singing piano with very high notes feels like mimicking or making fun of something, actually. So very light quality, but still the body is involved. I hope that answers that. Jenni, how about the alto section?
Yeah, what you said, plus maybe a little thought of that it's still loud inside you, what you want to sing, but you just don't let it all out. This is what I always have in mind. That it's,
yeah, and always think of the words that you're singing. If you find the expression, you will find a beautiful piano. A piano does not necessarily only mean to sing soft, but with a specific characterism. And if you find that, it's easy.
Oh, I really love this answer. I think I'm not going to add anything, because what you said, it makes so much sense to me. Thank you. Oh.
We've still got a couple of questions, so let's go for it. We have another one from Facebook from David. Big question here. He says, hello, ladies. What's the way out of COVID for pro choral ensembles?
Well, if you find out, please let me know, because I run this organization with some, professional choirs. No, I'm joking. The way out, if I may answer this one, there's no single or easy answer to this, but the fact that we, after over a year, we are still keen to make this happen shows how important art in general and singing and choral singing is in society. And if we keep on being advocates for it, shout out to the rooftops that why you think choral singing should exist, and really ask that question to you a lot of times, we will find a way. The motivation is still there. There are still passionate people around trying to make it all work, and it's restarting. And it's new in our lifetime, but these things have happened in the past, and the art survived. So we can do this.
Wonderful. I would like to add that maybe educate people that singing is not dangerous, because of the aerosols. Aerosols, is that the English word for it?
Yeah.
People are scared now, I think, of singing, some of them at least. And it's really our job to educate them, to tell them that it's not that dangerous as they think. It's as dangerous as sitting at a table having dinner together. It's
and shouting and laughing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is a really, really huge point. And still, I would second, ask yourself, why does the world need choir music? Why do you sing in a choir? What is it that is making it so special? And I think in this time, we experience that communicating with other people, being part of something bigger, having connection to other people through sound is so valuable. We all miss it so much, of course. And I guess there will be a revolution when we get over the pandemic, and a huge comeback for choir music. At least for my students, for example, they are longing for the next rehearsal. And I guess that's the same for all of the professional singers as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julia.
So I think we have time for one last question before I pass over to my colleague Esther to talk about a wonderful campaign about the benefits of singing. Were you ever sure that you were ready to start auditioning?
Absolutely not. Because I think this is a process. The career of a singer and of a choral singer never stops changing and developing. The voice changes, you change, you learn from the experiences. So if you are waiting for the right moment, you might never do it. And that's the thing for many things in life. And there will, of course, if I think of my best audition ever, it was when I was so passionate about the music and the project I was auditioning for that I thought there's nothing better for this than me. But that still did not mean that I felt I was 100% ready. And I think that's a good thing, because that means that there's always something that you can aim for, that you can look for, that you can try and learn from your colleagues. And that's marvelous. It's not static at all. That's my experience, at least. Julia, would you like to say something about it?
I mean, we talked a lot about auditions in the last few days when we prepared this webinar, and also in our episode about auditions. And actually, I'm excited to audition again. I'm not that scared anymore. And being nervous is a good thing. I think I heard this one from a conductor or a composer once, that excitement and being scared of a situation creates this feeling, right, where you feel like all bubbly and stuff. And there comes the point when you start to like that feeling, because it's a good one. You will be very sensitive for all the sounds around you, the smells, the colors, and you get you get so much adrenaline that the voice really, really starts to flourish. Actually, warming up is overrated in that sense. Yeah, at some point I started to like that feeling as well. I thought, well, that's a good point, actually. It's a great feeling. It's a bit like butterflies in the belly. And yeah, maybe just that little bit of mind shift would help. Yeah.
Jenni, would you like to add something? You know, do you ever feel 100% ready?
I don't think I ever did, because for me, practicing and performing is one process that always develops on the pieces that I'm working on. That for once. And for the other thing, I think it's more of a getting to know each other, where we are again at choose and be chosen. And in that matter, I think I always feel ready to get something new and somebody new to know, and a new situation.
And I think that is a wonderful place to to stop there. Thank you three so much for this. This has been, we have run over time, and this has been an absolute pleasure. It's like joining you, in a sitting room together, and it's really, really fantastic. I'm now going to quickly pass over to my colleague Estera, who will present a couple of extra things. I'll just share my screen.
First of all, I have to say thank you to David for posing this question, and to you ladies for the way you answered it. You made my job very easy. But first of all, thank you from my side as well. It was very inspiring to hear how much care you put in your answers, and exactly, it felt like we were with you at the table and just like getting a bit of your experience. And for the participants who've been watching us today, if you like this webinar, there's one more in this series of the EPIC webinars, as you probably have concluded. If you're interested on the topic, we're going to send you a feedback form after this webinar. Please write your ideas or things that you'd be interested in. But if you have like a suggestion or somebody that you'd like to listen to, you can write to Sophie. You have her email address on the slide, and she'll be following up on that. But actually, outside of the EPIC webinars, there's also this advocacy through storytelling online workshop that we'll be having with Julie Ward in June. They're going to be like 3 interactive hours where we just learn how to use storytelling to really reach out to higher levels and to policymakers, and really make some noise for collective singing. And yeah, let's stay in touch. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Connect, interact with us, and you'll also be finding this webinar on YouTube in due time. And you can share the link and invite your peers to see it as well. And of course, regular updates come to our newsletter. You're going to find this on our website. Just go to resources and subscribe. You're going to be finding news from throughout the choral sector as well. And yeah, let's have the whole world experience the benefits of collective singing. We're super excited to be launching this campaign right in this time when things start to restart, let's say. We do long as an association to live in a world where everybody sings and everybody experiences the great feelings of connection and all the other levels of benefits that you can have through singing together. So from May till July, we'll be focusing on this 4 benefits. I think the slide was a bit cryptic. So yeah, we really encourage you to check the website. So it's europeanchoralassociation.org/benefits of singing. You're going to find there existing research that you can use in supporting your letters or press releases, and yeah, generally a lot of resources where you can just use. And we really encourage you to adapt the contents of the campaign to your needs. So if you have an event or if you want to promote your choir, just link it to the campaign. I think it's a very good moment for all of us to join forces and just make some noise throughout all the social media channels online, as we still have the power. So also translate the contents, we can make that available for you, and multiply, use your own interviews and videos to link it with it. If you have a story to share or some inspirational person in your networks, just write us quickly, and yeah, let's make it happen. And we hope that you're going to engage, interact, and yeah, just spread the word. There are 37 million people singing already in Europe, so let's make it more. Let's reach out to everybody. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Estera, for your passionate introduction of the campaign, and I'm sure people will look it up. I would like to thank our three speakers very much, Laura, Julia, and Jenni, because I think it was really inspiring. I'm only an amateur singer, but still I almost felt like I should audition, I should try this out. And I've been thinking about a lot of people I know. I think, Sophie, we should share this webinar with all the national youth choirs, the Euro choir singers, the World Youth Choir singers, and just make sure they will watch it, because I think they will learn a lot from it. And that's exactly what we want to do in the frame of EPIC. So thank you to Laura, to Tenso, to Julia and Jenni for sharing. And if you have any questions, you know how to get back to us. Thank you very much for Sophie for preparing this, and for Estera and Alfred, who was silently in the back on Facebook to help us make this session successful. So happy singing is what I will end my presentation with.